Welcome everyone to OnPodcast, the on Microsoft podcast, where we talk about Microsoft stuff on a podcast. I'm your host today, Kareem Anderson, and I'm joined by.
David Allen, the fun one. How's everybody doing today?
Hopefully they're good, and hopefully it stays that way because we got a list of some fun topics. Nothing too depressing, so we're going to keep it lighthearted. We are also going to inform you guys through our list of things to talk about the new Teams 2.0. I know some of you may not have it just yet. It's being tested. We are some of the guinea pigs, so we'll let you know our thoughts on that and kind of walk through some of these new features. We'll also be talking about Activision CEO, what is his name?
Mm,
Kotick, Bobby Kotick,
yeah,
who's speaking out against Sony, I suppose, finally. Someone has to. Microsoft's been pretty polite about it. We're also be talking about how Google's unhappy with Microsoft in the EU and because of Google Cloud and some changes Microsoft made to kind of, I don't know, kind of bully them a little bit, so to speak. We'll be talking about Microsoft working on Windows 12 and its CorePC thesis. You know, they've been running for this Core OS idea for some time. We'll also be talking about Excel and all of the features that came to that platform this month, in case you are have been keeping up on all those. We'll fill you in. We'll also be talking about Bing Chat and kind of Microsoft raising the day limit on that, you know, kind of getting back to where they were before and maybe even exceeding it at some point with a little bit of confidence behind them. Lastly, we'll also be talking about E3. Maybe we'll like talk about that first because that is a bit depressing if you're a huge fan of the gaming conference. With all that being
is.
said, yeah, let's jump into our opening discussion, which is drumroll, brrr, the new Teams 2.0, which we are currently recording this podcast on. So if you ever wanted to see a live demonstration of dogfooding, you are watching it.
You're
Microsoft
getting it.
released Exactly. Microsoft released its 2.0 update earlier this week. And for those of you who are in enterprise and maybe are forced to use it, or those of you who are fans like ourselves and enjoy using it, here's some of the new things to kind of keep an eye out for. Microsoft revamped and overhauled Teams to optimize, quote, to optimize the data, network chat, and video architecture of speed and performance. The company has also indicated that this doesn't mark the end of an attempt to make the app even faster. So the biggest thing that you'll probably want to notice, you'll see up front, is the speed at which Teams operates, especially for the dedicated OS app. How are you feeling about the speed so far?
A night and day difference. I've got it on three different machines here, a couple of our review units and one of my personal machines, and I've actually done some side by side comparisons. And I want to say it's a almost a 2 to 1. I mean, you can quickly see that the new teams, even though I'm sure there's some debug code running in the background for Microsoft to get some reports out of us, maybe. But the new teams is quite a bit quicker for me.
Yeah, for me as well. But don't just take our word for it because we are fans. According to GigaOms, which is the website you can go to with a bunch of other writers and authors and researchers on there, their findings using a research firm commissioned by Microsoft. So take that with a bit of grain of salt. They are tracking the new Teams app's performance both in app launch and in meetings already twice as fast, and the memory consumption has decreased by half. These are always great numbers, you know, the speed of opening up something and the actions that you when you're using it are being going up and down, and they're both going in the right directions. So that's a good thing. And as like we said, we attest to the speed. Microsoft Loop has also made an appearance in Teams. Now, both I think we talked about Loop a little bit last week. We're currently using it, testing it out as well for again for people who would have a chance to get to it. But they were combining the two. It's one of Loop's sort of biggest downfalls is that it came out with the name Loop. Microsoft's talked about its Loop components being able to kind of take from apps and put things into one spot, but it hasn't actually done a very good job of that, at least not in the first week. But it's made an appearance in Teams. I haven't actually quite used it in Teams yet, so I was going to defer to you. Have you used anything Loop-ish in Teams?
Not yet. I have just kind of used it here for our podcast notes, like you were talking about. I do like it for this purpose. If you're coordinating a team or your organization to keep track of notes and presentations and whatnot, I think it's good for that. But I have not used any of the integrations or loop components as of yet. I need to sit down and tinker with those a little bit.
All right. Well, according to Microsoft, you should be able to put in some Excel charts and tables, notes from OneNote, and a list of other things from Office 365. I'm not sure how Word works into this, but I'm sure you can do something with Word and probably with PowerPoint. So, for those of you listening, or those of you maybe in our comment sections, let us know if you have access to both things and if you've created some loops in Teams and how it's performing. Another thing that you'll probably notice is, and this is again more of an aesthetic thing because it, for the most part, Teams still looks roughly the same. Similar to Facebook, the Teams 2.0 has adopted color theming and group chats. Profile pictures to help team members create a more personal space within teams as well as draw a sense of community. So, if you've ever used Facebook Messenger, you know that you can create your own little like siloed conversations with friends who also have access to Facebook. And then within that, you can also assign theming options. So if you want your messages to all be purple and everyone in the group sees purple, you can do that. If you want to create a custom thumbnail for the group to identify like, hey, this is our group of comic nerds or our group of gaming fans or our group of coders or whatnot, you can also do that. So it seems like you can also do the same in Teams. So if you're in a discussion maybe with your boss and you want to mark everything he says as red, it's kind of an alert. Or if you're in there with the design team, you know, mark everything as purple just to make a visual identifier which chat you're in. Because another feature that came was the ability to easily pop out conversations. I think you can do it in the old Teams. This one just makes it a little easier, especially when you hit a notification from someone in a specific chat. So have you done any theming yet?
I've not done any theming yet, and I will throw this out there, and you guys can laugh at me. I'm that guy that when I buy a laptop or get a machine, 5 years later, the same background is there that was the day I bought it. I'm not one to personalize the look and feel of an app necessarily. I'm kind of old school. I believe if you leave it default in as many ways as possible, maybe the more stable it is. Sorry, maybe I'm too old school, but I haven't really done any theming or anything like that. How about you?
I have done some theming, and like I said, it works just like Messenger. So for those of you who have used the platform or any other messaging app that allows you to do some customizations as far as the color of the text, it's very similar. You are not alone. I have seen countless people where I have scratched my head looking at their phone. You know, they have an iPhone 14 or whatever, and I'm like, that's the default wallpaper. Why haven't you changed that? Like, put a picture of your kid up
Mhm.
or put a picture of something,
Now
anything.
that I
But
do. I'll do that. I
okay.
will customize but I'm weird like that. If it's my niece or my nephews or somebody in my family, I will put the background up there, but that's it. I
Okay.
don't tinker with anything else.
I'm just saying, you're not alone. There are tons of people, even if you go in an office, you know, they'll have the Windows, that hologram from Windows 10 still on there. So it is
Uh-huh.
not an anomaly, but it is depressing for someone who likes to play around with things like myself. Um, with that being said, the Microsoft team also, and we're going to bounce back and forth between features and some of the mentality behind the features because they released like a joint post explaining why they've made some of these changes. And one of the things that they are admitting in the new Teams 2.0 is that in order to achieve part of this speed perception, I mean, some of it's actually there, but some of it is actually just based on leveraging animations to reduce the perceived load time. So for those of us who are saying like, oh, it feels faster, they've actually kind of manipulated the visuals, use more animations to make everything seem like it's moving and moving faster. And this is something Microsoft, at least with Windows, has had an issue with. I think this is something that Apple excels with as far as the smoothness of their OSs for iOS and for Mac OS, is that they use animations where Microsoft goes from one animation to the flat next animation. And if it doesn't have an animation, it just seems like it stalls. So you're sitting looking at a window until something flashes right in front of your eyes. It's the thing. Whereas in, you know, like we mentioned other OSs, they will have an animation of transition, which makes it again makes the operating system or whatever is being manipulated seem smoother and taking less time. So you'll notice that the animations in Teams are smoother, but they're also just taking a little bit longer in order to make things look like they're actually faster. Sounds counterintuitive, but it works. Have you noticed any of that?
I have noticed a little bit of that. Something I will throw out there. Not everybody has top of the line machines that's using Teams. There are some folks out there on 4 gigs of RAM, bless their hearts, but there are some folks, a standard $500 machine might be 8 gig of RAM, and I do happen to have an older machine around that is a Core i5 on 8 gigs of RAM. It's nothing special, just kind of the average everyday PC, and that's where I see the biggest difference is really that machine in particular. I mean, the quote unquote old teams runs like a dog on that machine. I'm gonna call it what it is, but the new the new teams, the animations are a little quicker. You can kind of tell, like you're talking about, Kareem, that they're using animations to kind of give us the perception of things speeding up a little bit. But overall, when we're working in our team atmosphere and we've got the planner open and we're chatting and we've got our channels going, there's a big difference in the new teams versus the old, especially on a machine with a little less specs than what might be desirable.
Yeah, and here are some actual beyond it. Here's some things, and beyond the speed that people will find very useful. Is that if you're using Teams, you have multiple tenants and accounts. The new Teams app will help you manage them a little bit better by promoting some flexibility as far as jumping in and out. We know that they've been a bit restrictive as far as signing in and signing out completely from the app. If you wanted to switch, you no longer need to do that. You'll be able to switch just like you would any other app that allows you to have multiple accounts, like an Instagram app or something like that. You'll be able to load up multiple accounts. So that's been a blessing for those of you who either have a work or personal and business, or any version of multiple accounts. So that's nice. Like you said, you don't need to sign out of the app completely, so you can just leave it open running in the background. The other thing is, going a little bit back to the visuals, they've said they've de-emphasized the purple-ish of it. So your big Barney-esque app will look a little less purple and allow you to kind of use a multitude of colors to make it seem like it's a little bit more vibrant and not just the branding that Microsoft has. You'll be able to kind of push your own branding eventually, they're saying, down the line. So if you have any kind of business-oriented colors, like we said, you'll be able to kind of establish those through theming. So if your business colors are blue and gray, you'll be able to kind of tailor this app towards that and make it your own a little bit, and instead of just the white and purple or the black and purple for Microsoft. The last bit that they have that they want to kind of emphasize that we'll talk about is that they're going to be bringing AI to it. Now, I haven't noticed any of it in actual use, but I'm assuming it's to do with Copilot uh, down the line or something like that. But have you noticed any AI so far in it?
Not yet, and that's something I've actually really been looking for. And I've not, while we're on the topic, I've not noticed a whole lot of AI in the loop yet either. I'm hoping we get that soon. I've not noted, like you said, I've not noticed anything saying, hey, how about making this decision, or hey, I took care of this for you. Not yet, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, and for those of you who are gonna like scream out of your minds or chew our heads off, we understand that the auto prompt filling out a sentence is there, and that's considered AI. But we're talking more along the lines of, hey, I was left out of a meeting for whatever reason, and the people that were in the meeting had a bunch of notes. They had a presentation, a slide presentation, and they did a bunch of other things. And I'm now jumping into that conversation and getting filled in through AI. AI will give me the TLDR of the whole conversation and things I need to kind of highlight before I even have to go through the entire conversation, roll up and down and watch videos and things like that. So that's kind of what Microsoft's proposing. Like you said, we'll wait to see it. It should be coming out in general availability later this year for everyone. I'm assuming they're going to be opening up more preview spots for people to test out. And for those of you who don't want any of this mess, and you just want things to kind of be what they are, there's always a classic toggle. So just like we had with the Outlook beta, if you go to the top left corner of your teams, you'll notice that there is a toggle. For those of you like myself who didn't even know how to get into the preview, also look for that toggle because that will toggle you into the preview. With that being
And
said,
you
let's
can
jump.
also
Oh yeah, go
toggle
ahead.
yourself in. You can also toggle yourself in and out, because, like, I believe it was you that was a part of our group that noticed
Yes. Correct.
There was some bugs, and it's not perfect, guys. So you can use that toggle to toggle yourself in and out.
Just make sure when you're toggling, you're by yourself for all kinds of reasons. Let's get into our headlines. What would you like to start off with?
Well, let's kind of jump on the argument bandwagon a little bit. It seems like Microsoft and Google are still upset with each other. Google isn't happy with the recent changes Microsoft made for European cloud vendors. A recent Reuters report took a look at Google's stance, which includes comments from, guess who? Google Cloud President Amit. It's Amit Zavery. I hope I'm saying that correct. The news comes just days after a Reuters report that Microsoft had offered to change some of its cloud practices to try to appease some of these issues. Now, the thing is, Google is saying Microsoft is cherry picking maybe some of the smaller providers and possibly even buying up some of the small providers instead of making these deals that he claims Microsoft may be using available to everybody. So, what does this mean? It means, Zavery saying that the cloud is meant to be for everybody. It's meant to be competitive. It's meant to be accessible. That, hey, Microsoft is cheating the system. They're not really making any changes at all necessarily to say, hey, we're going to be more friendly to our EU partners. They're cherry picking what they want, and he's very unhappy about it. So these changes were initially in October of 2022, and so far the EU has yet to make any comments, but Microsoft still faces an antitrust complaint from, I'm going to call it CISP, whose members include Amazon. And remember, Amazon Web Services is out there with their own cloud offering. So, Microsoft may have dug themselves a hole in this one if anybody can actually prove that they are cherry picking what's going on there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm going to go through something a little bit more technical for those of you who use Excel, which is all of us, I assume, to some degree. Excel has now, like I said, shipped some new features in March. Let's do a quick rundown of those. Excel for the web has now gained a new check performance feature, which allows the application to, and this is for the web, sort out and find unformatted cells that you may want to just get rid of, things that, extra cells that are off side or the bottom of your sheets, and you could find those and get rid of them to just clean up the way your presentations are if you're using Excel. The next thing we have, I believe, is no longer need to seek assistance from external sources whenever they're needed with helping writing formulas, because here we go, dun, 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 AI has actually been implemented in Excel to a certain degree. I'm not sure that this is Copilot, so to speak, but this is called Formula Argument Assistance. You can confidently write formulas without having to worry about them being, because with this, you'll be able to kind of get some highlighted features about what's kind of misspelled or what doesn't add up, things like that. So go ahead and write your formulas, and this will help you kind of give you some suggestions on, were you meaning to do this kind of functionality with it. Another thing that we have is Microsoft has incorporated drag and drop in the queries pane into Microsoft Excel. I believe this is in just the application. I'm not in the web just yet. The addition will make it easier for users to organize queries by either moving them between folders or sorting them out. It's a cool new feature. Excel for Windows. So this is also just for the dedicated app, is making Excel Windows safer by adding an extra layer of protection to Sheets with the new block and trusted XLL add-ins. They're designed to protect you from attacks through XLL add-ins, because that's pretty much how attackers kind of do leverage this. When you go to do something, they have this little pop-up thing saying like, hey, enable this. Well, Microsoft will now have a little pop-up of its own saying, don't enable that. We don't trust it. And finally, both Excel for Windows and Excel for Mac users can now delegate duties within Microsoft Excel and Word a little bit more easily using the new assign a task with @mention. So I can give my partner David something, in my Excel workbook, be like, hey, can you please finish doing this? Please finish the formula, please finish adding these numbers up. We can do that within this. And what's more, the users will get an email notification immediately after the task is assigned to them. So he won't have to necessarily keep checking the Excel doc to be like, okay, did the task finally get assigned? He'll get an email notification saying, all right, go in there and finish doing what you need to do so we can ship it out need to. Those are some of the features that came in March. I believe there are a couple more that I didn't list, but they didn't seem too big. But if you are a fan of everything Excel, you can also head to Microsoft's app log page to find everything that kind of happened this March. What else you got for us?
Let's see. Let's jump on to, while we're on the quote business side of things, let's jump on down to a little bit of guess what, folks? Bing chat improvements. Microsoft has been conducting a quote unquote discrete trial. This is their words, not mine. Implementing a higher daily limit for chat terms and per session turn limits in Bing Chat. The recent announcement has made the development official. The last update implemented resulted in we were up to 150 what Microsoft calls turns in Bing Chat. Now we're up to 200 turns, and we do have the ability to view Bing Chat history. I'm a fan of the history part. I mean, especially if you're having my team and I, we have used ChatGPT and Bing Chat to do some building for some side projects. I don't want to call these personal discussions, but it almost feels like sometimes these things are good enough that you're having personal discussions with them. So it's nice to be able to at least pull up your history and go, hey, what did I ask it yesterday? What did I ask it 2 questions ago? What did I ask it 5 questions ago? Because remember, you get to take so many turns and you kind of have to recontext what you're doing and start back over in a sense with Bing Chat. So it's good to be able to have the history there so you can have some idea of what it's already answered and how it provided that answer to you.
Great. That's awesome. Good to hear. I'm going to throw a big fat raw onion in the middle of our sandwich with E3 won't be taking place after all this year. I know I know those of us who are excited about gaming, we're to kind of, turn the clock back to, 2019 where things were, they weren't in the best shape for E3, but, it was still buzzing. Sony had just stepped out, and Nintendo wasn't there, but they were still having off-site meetings, and Microsoft made a big splash. But unfortunately, it looks like the event has been canceled, officially been canceled. This comes after multiple big players in the gaming industry like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Ubisoft, I believe, was last week or this week, announced that they would be pulling out as well. This might have been the nail in the coffee with Ubisoft jumping out. The event was set to make a comeback, an in-person event in Los Angeles for June 13th through the 16th, kind of like normally when it is. But admittedly, E3 has been through in a couple of rough patches over the past. Like I said, it was kind of the beginning of the end when Nintendo decided, surprisingly, Nintendo, the third leg of all the gaming industry, decided to step out because it showed that, these publishers could get their own audiences online. The pandemic accelerated that when Microsoft and Sony decided to host their own competing events outside of the E3 window. Even, if, say, they had held them in June, people would expect gaming in June, but now they're holding them, in February, they're holding them in November, they're holding them whenever they want to. So for I believe it's ReedPop, which is the owner of the E3 event, to kind of get people to try and come back to these. Now, I know it's more than just the trailers that we see. I know it's a whole swag event for people. It's for a bunch of people. It's different things for publishers as well. So maybe we'll start to see more or smaller dedicated venues for stuff like that. But unfortunately, this year we will not be having E3. We'll see what happens next year.
We talked about this several podcasts ago. It might even have been the end of 2022 when we first heard the rumor that there might not be an E3. And we talked about there being, the possibility of smaller venues, like maybe Nintendo does something for their fans, Ubisoft does something for their fans. And I get from a corporate point of view why that makes perfect sense to do such a thing, but I feel like also that, like you said, swag is what brought this to my attention. The gamers are really missing out because we download titles now. We don't go to GameStop and stand in line at 12, and wait till midnight to pick up our games and get the free posters. We're just clicking the download button. So I feel like the whole community feel, unless you're a streamer, of course, and even that's not the same, the whole community feel, the contact with our game makers and the folks in the gaming industry, we've kind of lost that element. And I'm a little, for now, sure, we're not having E3 this year, but where do we stand in 2 years? I feel like there's a feeling and there's a vibe that has disappeared or is disappearing with gaming and the connection between players and publishers. And I think we need to do something there. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think we need to do something.
We're going to have to figure it out. We'll see if there's some kind of platform that Microsoft or any of these bigger companies develops that allows that kind of sort of contact. I know there's Twitch out there, things like that, but I'm something on the more B2B, so to speak, for businesses and people to kind of talk to each other, more directly as they would have at conferences. But with that being said, what's our next headline?
I've got a gaming headline here for us. Guess what? We can't go a week without
Hopefully
leaving Microsoft. Yeah, well, it depends on your viewpoint. We can't go a week without leaving Activision and Microsoft out of the news. And let's throw a little Sony into it. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick has spoke up, and he has basically slammed Sony for what he calls disappointing behavior in a recent company-wide email where he basically sent something out and wanted to update his employees on what was going on with the merger. Kotick also said Activision would not allow said behavior from Sony to affect the long-term relationship. So basically what we've got going on here is the behaviors like this. Sony doesn't want a Call of Duty deal. They have made that perfectly clear, and basically they've said, look, we just want to block your darn merger. That's it. That's all we want. We just don't want the merger. Forget everything else. So when you do that, and when you speak up in corporate America, guess what? That kind of gets the government's attention. So we've kind of got the attention of some congressmen here who are getting together to start diving into this style of relationship here, because remember, Sony is a Japanese-based company where Microsoft has had trouble penetrating the market over there to get more Xbox content over there. Now, it was said that Microsoft has sold roughly 250,000 Xboxes or Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X over there this time around, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but from reports, that's quite a few. So maybe Microsoft is making some strides over there now. Come on, Sony. Are you going to be the ones to hold this up, or are you going to be kind of the bad apple in the bunch? Microsoft is out there, fighting the EU. They have fought, they're fighting the Federal Trade Administration over here, or the Federal Trade Commission, over here in the United States. Come on, Sony, at least play a little bit nice. A little bit. Can we do that?
That'll be a big fat no from Sony. And yep, that's a no. I just heard from them. That's a big no. Sorry, Nathan. But with that being said, I'm going to move on to something all of you who have probably, labored through this podcast to hear. Windows 12 talk. This is more specifically about Windows Core. Microsoft has used, they had Fedora, some other things. They had Windows 10s, which were supposed to be these modular versions of Windows where they only take parts of the code and apply it to specific hardware so that it's supposed to be fast. All in like, wait, we've heard this, plea and thesis for years, and it, every time they do it, they say it's about 10 or 15% smaller than the last time, but it's still a big bloated 40-year-old brain system underneath everything once you look at the spaghetti code. So But it looks like our friend over at Windows Central, Zach Bowden, is once again rehashing the core PC idea because Microsoft is playing with something called Project, or at least dubbed Core PC. They're just keeping it basic, no fancy names. They're going straight to the point. Now, the difference between Project Midori and Core PC is that not all Windows PCs need a full breadth of legacy Windows 32 app support, and Core PC will allow Microsoft to configure editions of Windows with varying levels of features and app compatibility. The big change with it is that the shipping versions that have Core PC will be in a state separated. Just like Windows Core OS, state separation enables faster updates and more secure platform via read-only partitions that are inaccessible to the user and third-party apps, just like iOS and Android. So there's still stuff in the back. The apps that will be plugging into these can't see them, which will help them, not fumble their way through trying to get to the actual things you're trying to open up. Now, Bowden reports that a version of Windows running only Edge, web, and Android apps and Office apps are planning to compete with Chromebooks, which, again, this is a thing that's always been, kind of Microsoft's dream. But at least this version of it Microsoft is saying 67% smaller than Windows 11 SC, which was, I believe, the latest attempt. Which is, and this is already being done in internal testing, which is huge. If you're smaller than the smallest version of what Windows thought it could be. The other part about Windows 12, aside from these, versions, which I believe takes me back to Windows, what was it, CM or whatever CE it was, the very small ones that they, just make Windows for. Yeah, it was
Windows CE.
Where you use it for bank, what was it, ATMs and, point of sale devices, things like that. The other thing that we should expect from Windows 12 is AI. Satya Nadella mentioned it about 2 years ago, start saying that we're going to be Panos Panay really pumped up about it for the last year and a half. And what we can expect to see with that is that we'll be getting prompts left and right, to whoever feels, prompts are too much, too little. That's up to you to decide. But prompts for things to do when apps are being viewed or about to be viewed or have been viewed in a workflow. So if you were a person who always opens up your laptop, you open up Outlook, you start triaging. Next to that, you open up the web. There'll be prompts for you to maybe go directly to your unread, or go directly to the websites that you want. Maybe there'll be a summarized version of the websites that you visit a lot. At least these are some of the things that have been kind of talked about as far as the AI infusion of Windows 12. Let's see. Some AI features developed include and this is according to Microsoft, the ability to analyze content on display and provide contextual prompts to jumpstart projects or apps based on the information that's currently being viewed. Windows may also be able to identify objects and text within images and allow the user to easily cut out and paste those items elsewhere. If you're doing something with a PowerPoint, or if you need just a quick screenshot to show the, what do you call them? The marketing team, things like that, you'll be able to do that as well. So this is just kind of what we know so far about Windows 12, is that it's going for modularity, and with this new Core OS version, which is supposed to be very small, and we'll be seeing more and more AI. As to when we'll be seeing this stuff, we're presuming in the next 5 or 6 months, as they kind of get ready to roll out Windows 12, I believe, in 2024. That brings us to, I believe that's the end of our show, right? That's the last headline?
I think that's everything.
All right. Well, what do you think about Windows 12 before we leave? What are your hopes and dreams, aspirations?
Part of what you mentioned there with Windows CE and having the core version brought back something that I'm just going to put in our viewers' minds and let them think about it. Windows RT. I hope we don't go back to the stripped down version where you're basically locked into what you can do with it. As long as Microsoft leaves that fairly open, I think we're good. And as far as Windows 12 and AI,
I gotta be baffled though for the Windows RT thing though. I feel like Windows RT was the worst of both worlds. I am all in if Microsoft wants to strip down a version of Windows. That will not be the version I buy, but I am all for it if I can give it to my mom and say, hey, you don't have to worry about the way things are updated. You don't have to worry about drivers. You don't have to worry about updates. Like that, I totally agree with. I think, like we said, Windows RT was kind of like, here's all the stuff you shouldn't have to worry about up front. but underneath it, you still sort of have to worry about it. If they're going to say, hey, this is Windows RT Part 2, and there is the desktop OS side, sell it to people. And if they're saying, here is the version that people like you and me can play around with, and there's another version for power users who do things beyond what we do, I'm all for that.
When I first read this, I was thinking, and I'm going to use that word that you have shunned against on a few podcasts here. I'm thinking a Windows version of a Chromebook. It's kind of what crosses my mind is the Windows version of a Chromebook, like you said, something to give a parent, a grandparent, even a kid, even a school-age kid. And I know Microsoft has their stripped-down versions in the educational program, but I'm talking something like you could go to a Best Buy, to even a Walmart, where everybody shops, and you could pick this device up for grandma, for the kids, just for a basic get online, because that kind of ties into Windows 12 and AI. I think that's the one negative thing that I have toward Windows 12 right now, is I'm concerned about where privacy is going to go with this whole AI thing, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Google, whether it's Adobe with Adobe Firefly, whatever. I'm concerned with where the privacy is going to be and how intrusive is it going to be, because we already see advertisements during some team meetings going, hey, you're in this meeting, but did you know you could be doing this right now with OneDrive? And it tends to throw those things in there once in a while. And as long as users have complete control, I think, of, hey, AI is out here. How much help do you want? How little help do you want? I'm looking forward to seeing it baked into an operating system, because that's only going to increase competition. Google's going to do something. Google's going to, as we're talking about with a stripped down version of Windows, Google's going to put that in Chrome OS. And I've already seen a report for those, that keep up with both sides of things, that Google is already playing with ways to put Bard in a Chromebook. So it's coming.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like you wrote an opening statement through the Italy regulators, who I believe just banned ChatGPT about 48 hours ago, and they're thinking about opening up an investigation into OpenAI and see what are privacy violations they've already committed. So you were right in sync with them. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see how your predictions kind of out. But I mean, we're not going to find out today. We're going to let everyone go about their day because I have a weed whacker behind me who wants to just make noise. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for another podcast. I hope it was entertaining, and we see you again next week. Where can people find you?
David PAJ1978, always hanging out on Twitter, folks. It's always in a window over there, so drop by and say hello.
As you can tell, man, love to talk. You can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter. I don't talk as much, but when I do, I love to talk to people. So with that being said, have a great weekend. Go find someone to talk to. Enjoy your day.